Our next key concept is that of justice. We hear it spoken about lots within our society, particularly in the media, particularly when somebody has been put in jail. We talk about whether or not justice has been done. And most of the time, we feel that justice hasn't been done. Someone has received a sentence, and we then say, well, that's not long enough. It's not justice. And of course, in that sense, we're not using justice as the punishment for the crime. We're referring to justice rather as an alternative word to the word revenge. Because what we want is that we're feeling pain, we're upset, somebody has hurt us, has come against us, or our family, or our friends, and what we want is for them to pay for that. We want them to be in as much pain as we are. And then we call that justice. In fact, the truth of it is that we should call it payback. Is that what we want to do is to pay them back with as much pain as they have caused us. Now, of course, the problem with that, therefore, is that whenever we see the word justice within Tanakh, we think that that's what the Bible's talking about, is really just another form of revenge. Yet, we need to realize that that's not really the concept at all within Tanakh. Justice is always something that belongs only in the hands of God. And I think that's a really important concept for us to understand about Tanakh, is that justice is never meant to be in the hands of humans. Because when humans mete out justice, we do it in a way which causes more violence rather than stops violence. And so therefore, the Bible always says that revenge, that all those concepts of justice is in the hands of God. Instead, the understanding that is within the Bible of justice seems to be very different to what we expect. Instead of that justice is for destruction, it seems like justice is all about restoration. There is a new movement within punishment and within the penal systems of so many countries at the moment. It's called restorative justice. And the restorative justice movement really comes out of the Bible. It comes out of the Mennonites, is one particular group that's promoting this concept called restorative justice. And the idea of restorative justice is not justice that punishes, that takes revenge, but rather justice that helps the perpetrator to understand what they have done, to understand the pain that they have caused, but then to restore them back into the community in which they have been. In many ways, the concept of justice within the Bible is more of the restorative kind than the vengeful one. And unless we can see that, we don't really understand the concepts of punishment at all. So often we punish in order to deal with the hurt that we've received. Whereas Tanakh wants to tell us that the whole idea of punishment is not in revenge, but punishment was seeking in order to bring restoration, to bring reconciliation, to bring the two parties or the many parties that have been wronged into some form of reconnection in community. Unless we do that, what have we really achieved? If by, in fact, somebody doing something to us, all we do is the same thing to them, what have we really achieved? And of course, that's really where it comes to in an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That when an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is instituted, what it's seeking to do is to limit the level of the spiral of violence. But in many ways, it's only an eye and an eye for a tooth. However, one could offer instead forgiveness for the eye or a forgiveness for the tooth. There is no requirement that you have to have one eye for one eye and one tooth for one tooth. And that's what Jesus brings out when he speaks in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew. When he says, it says, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I say to you, turn the other cheek. What Jesus was trying to say was the intent of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The intent of God's justice is not revenge. The intent of God's justice is restoration. For I came to this world not to condemn it, but to bring it back into relationship with God. That's what Jesus came for. That's restorative justice. When we think of it in terms of restorative justice, it changes the whole way in which we seek to deal with the world. That we seek to deal with the world not with holy revenge or even holy war, but we seek to deal with the world in a justice that is restorative, that is renewal, that is transformative in relationship. That's the word of the Tanakh. That's the key concept that it wants to share and wants to connect with, and that Jesus comes to fulfill.